Thank you all for coming. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to an order. We officially have a quorum. We have 6 churches in association, so thank you again for all being here. And I'm going to ask the senior pastor here, Steve Royal, to lead us in a prayer and to also kind of give us the lay of the land of the facility in case any of you need to know.
Welcome to First Church, and we're going to be following this meeting. We have some refreshments, and they're going to be in the corner room over there called Anthony Lounge, and it's in the northeast corner of the building. So we'll have some time to spend together, and I ask you to enjoy yourselves while you're here. Part of the way that you'll get to enjoy yourself more is to know where the restrooms are, and there are some in the hall behind us here, and there's also in the hallway over in the educational wing there as well. And I'm really honored that we're able to host this meeting here for Ken today, and he has been coming to First Church for the last year. It's always hardest to get the councils, attendance for the councils for people who are working in the wider church, rather than the parish, because everybody knows the folks who are in the various pulpits, but we're really glad that you're here. And Ken was out with us yesterday at the demonstration against the reparative therapy idea at the Marriott, and Eileen was there as well. And that whole reparative therapy seems to be waning, and the good news of it was that there were more of us outside than there were inside of the meeting. So over a period of time, that's good news for a lot of us. And so let us in this time when Ken is being considered for a ministry of the United Church of Christ and moving his standing from another denomination into ours, let us be at prayer. Come, Holy Spirit, come. Come with wisdom, come with fire, come with the love of Jesus, come with the creativity of God. Come to our hearts, help us to hear and help us to discern from this, our brother and your child Ken. Help us to discern the fit for ministry in the United Church of Christ with his gifts, and help us to listen, help us to ask good questions, help us to be open in our hearts, and help us to be filled with the charity and love of Jesus. We ask all this in the name of Christ. Amen.
I'm going to ask Ralph Earl to come up and give a short introduction for Ken, and then Ken will introduce himself, and then we'll have an opportunity to question Ken next. So Ralph, could you come forward? You can choose wherever you'd like to speak. If you'd like, both of these mics are live. This one's live, obviously, now.
May I have yours?
You absolutely.
Thank you. Well, it's really an honor to be here. I can think double negative. No one that I believe would be a better fit for UCC than you, Ken. I've known Ken for 20 years. The way I met Ken was that Ken and his wife Eileen, who were here, came to hear me and friend Pat Carnes talk early on when we were starting the sex addiction world. And Ken came up to me and he said, I know a Dr. Ralph Earl, and do you know him? He said, he's one of my seminary profs, Ken said, and yeah, my dad. And Ken had been in our home where I grew up from 4th grade to high school many times. Had no idea that my dad had a son, whatever that says about family of origin issues. But Ken just told me, I feel better about my dad. He was looking at what commentary that my dad wrote and was dedicated to my mom and to me, and that he was excited that I was in ministry. Now, when you leave, I'm going to name the denomination. Both of us went to Nazarene College. That's part of, if you've seen his pedigree, that we both went, he in Oklahoma, me in California. And when I left and became United Church of Christ minister, I actually had a church that was a Congregational Christian church before the UCC was formed. And Dad's a Nazarene seminary professor. He wasn't real excited, by the way. That changed from the You are in the know, I can tell. And, he loved me, however, just before he died, I always share the story. He said, "Ralph," he said, "I think you're going to heaven." I said, "Well, thanks, Dad." In spite of the UCC, he was making it. Ken, we have psychological counseling services. We have 26 therapists, and I looked, telling Lisa and Steve, looked at what we do as ministry, the term we use. I've remained ordained because it's the pastoral side of ministry. And that's actually why I went back to school, never get my PhD, never thought about leaving ministry. And I haven't, never thought about not being ordained. And thanks to the United Church of Christ, which welcomed me with open arms, and I believe is welcoming you with open arms, Ken, and if not, let me know. We can take care, we have hit people that work for PCS. Now, I am biased, and what kind of name we those people are. But Ken is, we see people from, about 80% of the people who come to PCS come from outside of Arizona. And I will tell you that Ken Wells has an international reputation as a therapist, because doing what he does, many people, including me, believe that no one does it any better than Ken does. His ministry includes working with sex offenders, working with families. We work with clergy a lot. It's no shock that clergy, in addition to me, have needed help and have gone for help. And so Ken has a passion for people and a love for people. That shows out in what you were saying, the passion that Ken and Eileen and their two sons, Sam and Jimmy, have for working on the border problems, working and demonstrating and being very much involved. I actually think that Ken has a greater passion for that part of his ministry than he does for the counseling ministry, and he doesn't let up at all in his therapy world. But Ken and Eileen and their two sons are a family that fit the United Church of Christ so well in terms of social action. I remember one of my profs was Reinhold Ziebor, and that for me, by the way, how many of you have been ordained? I got ordained in 1963. Was anybody ordained before that who's here? Oh, please, somebody. Okay, I'm regularly the older. There's a lot of groups, and so Ken to me is a kid. You're a kid, and it's just when Ken came to PCS, we talked a lot about ministry and we talked about how to have integrity, which for me was a change that was necessary to be able to be who I am. I love what's up in front, Steve. Love your advertisements, what you say out front, no matter who you are, where you are on life's journey, you will welcome you. That's what happened for I feel it's about this. In 1960, Congregational Christian on Beacon Street welcomed me and said, "Hey, glad to have you." And I wasn't experiencing that the same way. In the denomination I grew up in, and then when Ken was talking about his ministry, had no doubt that my home, UCC, would be helped by Ken, you making this local church of your home, and this denomination, UCC, your home. So it's really a pleasure to be here and be a part of your life this way, and Eileen, it's great to have you here.
Ken, can you come up and say a few words about yourself before you start to take room?
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I know some of you don't know at all, and those who I do know, I'm getting to know better. I know you have a lot of things in the afternoon on Sunday, to do. But thank you for prioritizing me for at least an hour or so. It's a good feeling inside. What I would like to share about myself and my background, I say this, think of Søren Kierkegaard, one of the theologians, talked about how life is meant to be lived forward, yet it's only understood backwards. And preparing for this event today, I have a lot of thoughts that will go backward to how I grew up. And maybe today, some of the non-traditional theologians that impact my life, that I think of anyway, Bob Dylan, when he made a statement around, said that, you need to know your song really well before you sing it. And then another person that's meaningful to me is Paulo Freire, an educator, focuses on social class and education. And he said, but you need to be able to sing your song before you know it, before you really know it. And I think those three bookend thoughts come to my mind today because I grew up in the Church of the Nazarene. When you grow up in anything, there's some things that always will be. There'll be a Nazareneism in me. That's not all that much different than I also grew up a Cub fan. And I'm not I have real feelings about both that are more hostile than acceptable. But I'm still both. Some way. It's a part of my history. Maybe DNA. I don't know how that works. I think you just soak in stuff long enough, and it's just there. I grew up in a family. My parents raised 12 children, 9 of their own, and 3 of my oldest sister's children. My father found religion early. My mother, historically, it's real important to say this piece. My mother, when she was 9 years old, accidentally burned my sister up, or her sister up, playing with matches. And out of that context, my mother found baseball as a way of finding some kind of accolade from her parents. And then she met my dad. They eloped in the middle of my mother barnstormed in the Midwest just prior to the League of Her Own deal, and that was her thing. She's a great baseball player. When she met my father and married, they eloped. That eloping was against her parents, and so she was kind of on the outs of parent again. And then she found God. She got born again. Happened through the Nazarene faith. And my mother spent the rest of her life, in part, trying to prove her worth by helping and caring and sharing and giving in ways that are pretty unhealthy in ways, in my estimation, yet profoundly impacting on me. Baseball was important to me as a kid. When I didn't do so well with that, I found God through the Nazarene. I did some of the very same things she did in trying to prove my worth. And found out that wasn't meaningful, didn't work. So in the whole process of time, it's been over 20 plus years, I've been able to unravel some of the unhealthy process of my relationship with church, with religion, and to try to find a sense of congruency that makes sense for me. In my journey, I found out that the flaming focus around fundamental, helping people find God in the way that I respect those who choose that. It's not a part of my life. Found out that there's a better way that's more compatible to me. And as I began to address my own issues of brokenness in my life, I found out that what's real important to me is to be congruent. I feel this way. My journey in spirituality has come to grips with my own hypocrisy. My bias is that I believe everybody's hypocritical. I believe everybody's inconsistent. And I believe everybody's incongruent at times. And I think it's important for me to live out a life of being accountable and responsible for all of those. And so in the doing of that, it's brought me to a lot of places of humility. And humility has been a major cornerstone for my spiritual growth and development and pursuit. So in that context, the church I worked with, the church I was a part of and ordained for 30 years in the Nazarene faith, wasn't compatible with me any longer. Some of the things I had great compassion for. I care a lot about oppression. I care a lot about people who have been dominated. In one sense, next week, this week, Friday, 60, Friday. So perhaps I was young. My kids don't say that. They're coming over music. In some ways, I've been around the block a lot. In wonderful ways, I'm learning so many new things. I learned about my privilege of being a white man, having all these privileges that, as I rub shoulders with those who are oppressed, people of color, women, people who who don't identify themselves particularly as male or female, and just listen to story again and again and again. It's helping, that's probably the greatest theological teaching I gained is listening to people who are oppressed. And I have a great heartbeat of concern that I would change my life from age 60 to the rest of my days. I hope to be in quiet rebellion. That's a determination I have to rebel against those things that hurt people, including myself, because I have hurt people. I have been manipulative in asking people. I can think of times in my life as a pastor where I asked people to sign up just because I simply had an empty space and I needed someone to get in there and do it so I could get it off my back. I knew all the church language and the God talk to say it around it so they would do it and feel like they're doing something for God. And they probably did something for God. It's just that where I was at, I deemed was hurtful. And so I'm asking for transformation in my life. And part of my transformation is leaving a denomination that I don't hate. There are things about life I do hate. I've learned not to be dominated by that, to shift out of that. But I think about my past and my denomination I grew up in. It's just that I'm in a place now where for me to manage my congruency, I need to be with folks who are far more open and accepting of individuals who are oppressed just like me, who have oppressed others like I have, and who are willing to be accountable and responsible for that oppression. Those are people I want to walk with the rest of my life. So I used to pastor, I used to preach. Now I give myself in this healing ministry, counseling. It's a strange thing. I've never thought of myself as a counselor. Yet, you do what you do as a pastor, and you end up counseling a lot. And then I came to a place where it made a lot of sense that I would zero in. And the niche I work with are people. I kind of felt like, well, who would Jesus hang out with if he were here today? And that's a big deal for me. So I kind of figured he would hang out with people who would be lowest on the totem pole socially. So I learned something about how to work with folks who've perpetrated other people with sexual abuse. I learned a lot about them. I learned how to find me in them. So that particular challenge isn't mine. Who they are is who I am. Because I found healing in embracing offending ways that I offend people. If I could call myself out on that, and if I could let you, if you're part of my close group, know about my offending, and then you could tell me about yours, then together we'd make a lot safer community. Versus, because I'm going to hold you accountable, you're going to hold me accountable, versus trying to take people and put them underneath bridges and say our community's more safe, or put them in 2 or 3 houses here in Phoenix which is kind of what it is. If you don't own a home, there's just a few places you can live. I found out to be a lot better. So here I am, and I'd like to join you folk, and I'm open to any kind of question or any kind of thoughts you have back my way.
Well, Ken effectively covered 2 or 3 of my questions. Because I was going to ask you right away, why the UCC? And I think you effectively covered that, especially from a personal standpoint, and then went on to talk about how it relates to counseling. So I don't think we'll touch on that again unless you want to illuminate it as it relates to this question, which is, describe how you use scripture and prayer in your work, in your testimony.
Well, for me, I think it's important that in my heart I be who I am. So if I don't use scripture as it relates to pointing out a Bible verse and saying, okay, we're going to use this, or particularly, I particularly don't pray specifically with clients who come to see me, primarily because there's a couple reasons. One, I want to respect where people come from. And a lot of people we have come to us are, one, either not a Christian faith, or I need to learn to understand when they come to me to work through their issues, how they're choosing to use their Christian faith. Is it going to be such that they use it, a scripture verse, in a way, hide behind a problem, or can we use it in a way as a gateway to helping them access? So typically, I'll first ask that individual, tell me a little bit about the faith. If they're open to an understanding of how faith can help them go deeper and embrace their challenge versus avoid, then I can explore that with them. If they choose not to, my particular approach would be more direct and carefronting about how they use the scripture in a way that can be very abusive and not helpful. And so that particularly would be an approach in terms of how I work with individuals. Scripture is very important to me. I use it much in terms of preparation for sitting down and talking with someone. I do have a Bible in my office. I haven't referred to it when people come in.
I was glad to hear you talk about accountability. You touched on that a little bit, that we're all in this together and we're accountable for one another. I'd like you to talk about that a little bit more and how it relates to the UCC polity and what your understanding of that is.
Well, I think to me, though I'm not real well versed around mystics, but there's one I recently read, St. John the Cross, who talks about this context of how we are to cocoon our faith in community. And when I'm disconnected from the community, what happens is I become like this lone coal outside the fire, soon becoming very cold and distant. Well, my experience in my spiritual faith has been that. I've had experience in church where it hasn't been real warm, and I felt myself to be that cold that was getting that was chilling down, and I didn't feel a lot of warmth and connection inside the community of church. I found it through 12-step work, that sense of acceptance, that sense of being able to walk in and embrace. And even though I know historically it's been said that the 12-step group is as much like the early church as anything replicated in the church itself. What I have thought to be is this, is I would like to be a part of a church connection where I could truly be loved and accepted. And it's kind of like this, as I understood and began to talk about this context of covenant that's so important in this denomination. A covenant to me is that I seek to have a relationship with the body of folk who are willing to hold each other accountable for spiritual growth. And that's something that's really important to me. So I haven't known a lot of that, honestly, as a kid growing up, but I've learned to create it, and part of the creation that I hope to have is that within the church. When I hear our pastor speak about vulnerability, when I hear him share parts of his heart, my heart reaches out for that, because that's the language I understand. It's a language of common shared brokenness, because I've discovered that that's what draws me closer to people, in the church or out of the church. Honestly, I could find this if I was hanging out with somebody in a bar. If I knew, in fact, these folks were talking about brokenness, I could show up there. I don't understand about all the various aspects of their life. When it comes to brokenness and opening my heart and listening to their heart, I can connect with that. And that's what I seek here in church. That's what I sense when Steve shares his heart. I sense that common shared brokenness. His world, my world, we live different worlds and different occupations and lifestyles and all the stuff we do. But man, we talk brokenness. When I hear him share that from the pulpit, that's something that's really important to me. So,
Thank you. I know you spent time with John Dorhar. I'm going to ask you one more question before I turn this over. Does he know you're a customer?
no. Probably.
Sorry, I asked him if John Dorhar knows that he's a Cub fan.
Probably used to, because John's got a Cardinal fan, right?
Uh-huh.
You grew up St. Louis and have to be a Cardinal fan. Yeah, that's what it used to be. So I'd be more comfortable saying I'm talking about that.
All right. So can you all hear? I mean, should we be using these mics? Would that be better? No? Okay. So I'm going to open the questions up to the floor. If there are any other folks that have questions for Ken.
I'm deducing from what you said that your ministry has been pastoral rather than parish ministry. And would you talk about what your experience is in that regard, and what you're seeking in the UCC in terms of call?
Yeah, could you share a little bit more? You differentiate your pastoral and
have you been like a senior pastor of a church? Yeah.
If I could just share, most of my work has been as an assistant, and most of my life I worked in churches that kind of large type churches. I have pastored 2 churches. One church I pastored for 2 years. Another church I pastored for another 2 years. So I've been senior pastor, and most of my role, I just, in the work I've done a lot of work around, for me, pastoral parish care took place. The reason I can put those two together is for years I worked in a setting where we would go out and we'd call it parish ministry, where early in the morning to late at night I'd go out and visit people in their homes. That's back when we did that, and that was my whole life in ministry. But then I also shifted to other forms where I developed education programming, that type of thing. I came to a place in my life where I guess I came to a place where one of the areas of my life in ministry as a leader, as a pastor, is I worked with a church that was damaged and was wounded because of past leadership, breaking boundaries in ethical ways. And so I came in on that scene and sorted out an awful lot of dynamic in church that I've since learned so much about. And it came to me that one of the ways that I could heal help a church heal is guiding people through that brokenness of infidelity, that brokenness of mistrust in the context of church and the system. So at some point I came to a place where I went back to get new training, and Dr. Earl asked me if I would be willing to come and work with that group, and so I began doing that work. And there's a whole large network of focus that we've done down through the years in helping churches heal. So I've taken all the ministry experience I've had in the past to be able to use it in the work I do now. And so I guess my hope to do now is to be able to continue working and walking alongside pastors who struggle at various levels and associate that with a context, a philosophy, and a theology that makes a lot more sense to me, Judy. And that's my hope. That's my goal.
Thank you.
Marsha Rutten, United Church of Sun City. We have a lot of returning veterans that are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. How do you see your role in counseling that group of people in a faith-based way?
Well, the group I work with is well known throughout the world in dealing with post-traumatic stress. I guess the way I show, there's so many techniques. I don't think you're asking me about technique. I think you're asking me about something else. The way I do that is just show up and be real. I have pretty strong boundaries. I won't allow my own experience of brokenness. I got to do my therapy, but fine, I'm better than this. Okay? But at the same time, I do have an ability to draw from my own heart of brokenness to walk alongside someone who has been hurt in ways similar. And I've been able to find common threads. I've been able to walk with that person. And I do draw from my faith a lot. I just don't use a lot of, honestly, I don't use a lot of scripture talk. I don't use a lot of God. I call God talk. I'm not against God talking. It's just that sometimes it gets in the way. When you're trying to call inside someone's head and their heart, you got to find out the connection where that person is. So to me, that's kind of I guess I just use a heart exegesis. I just open my heart in ways that are appropriate to share and connect and find healing. And then I'm a part of a great team that uses so many wonderful techniques that together, team, we're able to make a difference.
You are a part of the Nazarene Church. You were ordained in the Nazarene Church. What are the qualifications for ordination in that church?
Well, they would expect you to be born again. They would expect you to have what's called being filled with the Holy Spirit, because that was clearly told to me at that time. And you'd be educated. I finished my degree in my undergrad degree was in the area of business administration, and my seminary degree, of course, is an MDiv. I would need to complete that. And then they'd asked me to complete a minimum of 2 years of senior pastoral ministry, or 4 years of associate level, assistant level of ministry. Since at that time I was focused on the associate level, I did 4 years of that. And then there's a series of requirements regarding examinations in terms of whether or not you were aligned to the denominational doctrine. And upon that examination, I was ordained. That happened in 1980. I was ordained. That happened in 1980.
Any other questions? Vernon?
I'm Vernon Meyer, pastor at Sun Lakes United Church of Christ. Could you say a little bit more about that relationship that you described between pastors and yourself in the counseling area? I remember people would come to me as a pastor and assume that simply because I was a pastor and had a seminary degree that somehow or another that qualified me to be a counselor. And I would always tell them, well, I'll be happy to visit with you one time, but if there's, if I realize that you need more, I'll send you to a counselor. And they were just in shock, like, well, you're an ordained pastor, you must know how to do this. And I went, no, I don't. I never took a psychology course in my entire life. because it wasn't the focus of my ministry. And sometimes pastors are uncomfortable with kind of creating a relationship outside the church. I mean, with other professional people, to draw in other professional resources and that. Can you say a little bit about how you might do that, especially here in our conference in Arizona, particularly in Arizona?
In terms of
The relationship, the partnership that you might create, and how you might go about doing that, because sometimes pastors are just like, I'm ordained, I can do this.
well, sometimes what's true in my world professionally as a therapist is not true in your world as a pastor. You pretty much have to wear many, many hats, and dual relationship is a part of the world you live. If you're a pastor, as a therapist, then I cannot do that, which makes my life a lot more simple than it was when I was a pastor. And there are many times as a pastor, I was just thrown into scenarios where I somebody needed help, and so you just tried what you tried, and over time you learn some things, and I think I hurt some folk, and sooner or later, people, I would try to connect them to somebody who could be helpful. But pastors, I think I heard Dr. Earl tell me that was it close to 50% of people who seek out help first go to the pastor. So there needs to be a good working relationship between pastors and therapists. So how we do that, how I do that is, I say we because I'm part of the team, and how I do that is do my very best to build healthy relationships with pastors and try to help them realize how important it is to set clear-cut limitations and boundaries what they can do, and then do my best to build relationships in terms of what I do as a specialty, where I receive a lot more training in terms of going back and getting I got another degree in counseling and master's programming, that kind of thing, and the training's ongoing, of course. But what I can do to be helpful is to come alongside and just create programs to connect, and also just build I just know a bunch of folk here in the Valley, not just our own group, but just do my best to help them find a connection with an individual who can help their parishioners. And we've been pretty good with that.
I'm interested, you have a job, so you don't need to be ordained to get a call. You've got a faith community to walk with you, as you said. So why is it you want to be ordained?
Seek call.
Privilege.
Privilege call. Yeah, I probably should have clarified that at the beginning. I was actually standing here thinking I probably should have set that up. What Ken is seeking today is permission to seek privilege of call within the UCC. He is ordained, and the UCC recognizes his ordination. What we're looking for is privilege of call in the UCC.
Do you want to define that a little bit, please? Yes, I'd appreciate it.
Well, it allows him, he could put out a profile to seek a call to a church, but he is a professional counselor and therapist, so what he's looking at is creating a covenant between the UCC and himself and his business, which every ordained pastor creates a covenant when they accept a call. And Ken is looking for that covenant to be between him and his professional counselor.
Thank you.
I would say one other way of looking at that, Steve Wales, First Congregational Church, one other way of looking at that is that presently his relationship is with the Church of the Nazarene, where he was ordained, and he's no longer comfortable in holding standing in that denomination because it doesn't fit the kind of it no longer fits the kind of ministry he's doing. And so for Ken, it's not going to involve a job change at this point, but a covenant change to be with the United Church of Christ as the umbrella organization for his ordination, and for his collegial relationships will be with those of us who are in the United Church of Christ clergy.
And on oversight, which is to
Right.
specifically the Southwest Conference, United Church of Christ, the oversight of his ministry.
So it's actually an ethical and theological change that he's making rather than moving to a whole new world.
Asking that.
But you don't need
It's in your question, right?
you don't need to make this change to continue what you're doing. But you feel like you need to make this change for reasons of ethics and theology, right?
That's true. That's a true thing, yeah.
Yeah, he just used the word congruency. I was thinking about what you said about working with churches. We frequently, I know when I was a minister of the church, but I haven't had a church since 1970, but a while. When I referred, never heard of it from the therapist. And actually went back to school thinking I'd stay as a minister of the church and decided to do the pastoral part full time. But we frequently do, as Ken said, Ken ran a clergy group. We also try to involve at times the minister, like we have a minister come. If it's an ongoing safe relationship with a client, an ongoing relationship with the minister, not with us. So I may invite a clergy person to come and be a part of the session. Love to do that. And will, with the written permission of the client, actually send information to the ongoing, from one minister, Ken, or from Ralph, to the other minister, whose ongoing ministry there is pastor. So we take that very seriously. And I know that's part of why Ken remains a minister, so we can function minister to minister. And we said, Steve, and I heard you saying, Ken, it no longer works for Ken to do that within the national church.
Okay. That'd be true. Yes. Thank you.
Greg Essenmacher, First Congregational, UCC. You talk about in your statement of belief that you don't take the Bible interpretation literally. However, that is not the case for many people of faith. And with the people that you work with in your line of work, especially those that are dealing with sex addiction, tends to heighten the level of emotion of those that have fallen victim to those people that then want an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Why is it that you're giving to these people who have taken so much from others? So how is it that in your faith personally that you balance that of those that are calling for the punishment to fit crime of those that are victims of the addicts that you'd be working with?
Well, I think it's first important for me to have great empathy for the one who's been really hurt. So listening to that hurt, I would guess we live long enough, most of us have been betrayed in some form or fashion. And so when I've been hurt, it always is healing to feel validated. So I start there to try to listen. In addition, I think that's what Jesus would do. It's just listen. So to start with that piece was really important. And then what I try to do is I join and listen, and hopefully I can help that person find the value in healing, to see their own ways whereby they have offended. Not in the same way, but in principle. And so when they can do that, the reason I think that's important, because I think that's what Jesus' parable is about. You look at, you make such a big deal about splintering one person, but you got a lot in your own eye. Let's take a look at that. So in principle, it's been so helpful. And so I think it's a skill to walk alongside and help someone see that. But I think it's also about being present and knowing what that's like to be victimized and to victimize another person, which I think that dynamic in all of us. That's my bias. And so to walk alongside someone and listen to them and wait for the opportunity, sometimes you have to be more patient than I'm willing to be. Sometimes I confront before, it's human, I was perfect, but then I just think it's really helpful to help that person see how in ways that they have offended others so that they can be able to come to that place of forgiveness, which to me is let go. And not let that control me anymore. That's what I'm looking for.
I was at the protest earlier, actually, in the day, and talked to one of the... Yesterday, actually, yeah. And one of the speakers came and tried to suggest to us that the therapy not only does not have a religious bias to it, but that if somebody came and wanted to believe that they needed to change who they were, their attraction, their same-sex attraction, that certainly, as a therapist, that's what he would do. The question more is, given that the denomination is in support of marriage equality and that we're an open and affirming conference, and assuming, I think, that the Church of the Nazarene would not be on the same side of that argument, how do you make that change for yourself?
Well, how did I make that change? There's so much to it. Well, it had something to do with that sign I was holding yesterday. I said I had a sign up like this out there, and one of the guys told me to get out of the street. But it said, what did Jesus have to say about homosexuality? Absolutely nothing. But some of that, it's deeper than that, because you see, I was able to make that change in these ways. I grew up profoundly in ways that were bigoted, in ways that were very, very prejudiced toward gay community, among other communities, not just gay, but that was one. When I went through my own brokenness of getting in touch with ways in which not only had I been abused, but had abused other people, that brought me to my own awareness that I have brokenness in me. And my brokenness was my prejudgment of other people. And one of the beautiful things for me, there was another minister in this city who's a part of a minister's group that I was a part of, who was gay, who I chose to let teach me about how to connect. And transform my life. And so for me, I'm busy about trying to let people teach me how to connect. And a gay man, a woman, a transgender person, is probably God to me. There's a lot of things being spoken to me, and it opened my heart. So I got to a place where I was just absolutely, I felt dead inside, you know, and I want to be alive. And it helped me through common shared brokenness. And my brokenness was my judgment of people who happen to be whatever. I have no idea why I'm straight or why other people are whatever they are. But God used those individuals and continued to use those individuals to talk to me about my prejudice, my racism, all my isms, you know. So that's how it's happening. It's not like it happened. I'm not a before or after. I'm kind of in the middle. But I don't ever want to be anywhere else. I don't ever want to arrive, because that's just not where I want to be. I want to continue to grow and become to understand better about humankind.
there any other questions? Ken, is there anything else you want to add before I excuse you for a moment while we deliberate?
Thank you. I'm really grateful that you're here, but I'm looking beyond just you being here. I don't know how you do your thing, I don't know how you do this part, in or out, whatever. I really want to be in with a group of folks who want to make a difference in our community by all of these oppressions, hate. I know hate. I have hate. There are things I hate. I just want to get stuck in it. But I want to connect with a group of folks who really are serious about making that change. Where I can work together in sending love. My son Jimmy reminds me, he says, well, Dad, this whole deal we do, it may be more about growing a sequoia. Take centuries. Maybe what you would like to see happen will happen beyond. But if I can know that my choice in being with you, or you choose to be with me, will be a part of that growth, that would mean a lot to me. And if it's not with this boat, I'll find some boat. I'll figure that out. I think matter of fact, it has to be like an ordination. I'll do it anyway with people because I already see the spirit of this church. But I just want to focus on what I see. When I was in the 60s, I missed it. I was a part of a group of people who believed Martin Luther King was a communist. Now those folk then didn't hear about that, but most folk now who thought that then just don't admit it. I did. I thought that. Why? Because I grew up that way. And I thought about, Vietnam War. I was for it. Heroes today are more the guys who went to Canada than those were guys that weren't esteemed. All I'm saying to you is I missed it then. I don't want to miss it today. I want to be a part of it. Because I know there's hate. And I want to be a part of that change. I want that change. Even though there's a racism in me, I can be tough, and I will be tough. And I love being taught by those people who are oppressed, who are gutted. I walk down the street here with those immigrants. They don't have any papers, and there's a little kid. Their mom and dad are going to get kicked out, and I've watched that happen. Those people inspire me. I want to be a part of that change. I will be a part of that change. I am. I'd like to be that with you.
Thank you, John. So I'm going to invite Ken and Eileen. Would you step out with me, Ken, while we deliberate either hang outside in the courtyard or Steve's office, I'm sure, is available. Yeah, I can,
It'll get more. We always like to leave a little suspense.
All in favor of eating? Aye.
Congratulations. You're now privileged to call, and on behalf of the United Church of Christ.
Well, thank you very much.
Welcome. We're privileged to have you.
Thanks so much.
Even if you are Cubs fans.
That almost broke it right there.
Thank you very much, you all.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it very much.
very much.
Thanks.
All right, so this meeting is adjourned.